Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start. Please make your way to the conference room. Thank you.
All right, if you can take a seat. Okay. Good. All right. This is the final leg of the program. You've been very, very brave. I know the program was dense, but we're not done yet. Almost. So just a little bit of more attention, and then there are drinks. So very soon. So we will, for this final part, I'll leave you in the capable hands of Florin, that I've introduced a few times now, so I won't do that again. But we are first going to hear more about synchrotrons and extreme brilliance. We look forward to hear more about that. And then we will wrap it up and see what needs to be done to help policymakers shaping FP10. All right, so Florin, I hand over to you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your short break. So this is, like Marilyn said, the final leg of the conference. We don't have a lot of time until the evening reception, but we have some important things to do until we get there. First on the list is a presentation by Francesco Sette, who's the Director General of the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility, also known as ESRF, who will tell us a bit about what are these synchrotrons about. And then at the end, I'll ask him a few questions. So, Francesco, go ahead.
Thank you. It's been a long day, indeed, very interesting. Lots of challenges. Lots of problems which are unsolved, but this is really what keeps us all going. I think the last session on young talent has been really something that renovates the vigor that the less young talent try to put in their life. We've seen Pablo contributions. So, we have been talking also about the role of research infrastructures, the way they enter into creating knowledge, but also exploiting knowledge, and most importantly also in preparing the next generations for their use. So I'm going to give you the example of what I know, which is the ESRF. ESRF is a source of synchronous radiation you find in Grenoble, at the confluence of two rivers. You see it here on the campus, this DPN campus. They share with EMBL. Edith heard in this morning that underlined the importance of X-rays in progressing in structural biology. And also we have the ELL, which is the most powerful neutron research reactor existing in the world. And I'm going to tell you why with X-rays we can unlock some of the key secrets of our universe. So for me, and this is a very important point, a research infrastructure is enabling research and is in general required when people cannot do it alone without this. So it's really bringing people together with the idea of doing something that wouldn't be possible alone. And so when you do that, the first thing for a research infrastructure is the science. It's the research. What do you want to do? What are you going to do in day one? And I think this is something that is extremely important and should be put on the first pages of all research infrastructures in Europe, new and existing one. And in the particular case of ESRF, the science case that we have been reviewed over many years is to study complexity of condensed matter, both materials and living matter, starting from the atom, we are in a world of atom, all the way up to a functioning object. And you can immediately see examples for biology. I don't know if I have a laser, I don't want to change the slide. So you see you start from the atom, then you have the protein, and all the way you go to a working body. And maybe you can even go beyond. The same would apply to materials, energy today, storage, environment issues, supply chains of food and so on, circular economy. Complexity is everywhere. And starting from the atom, understanding the object and determining the characteristic of the functioning object with the structure and the dynamics of the single atoms is really what synchrotron science is all about. So we went into a major reconstruction and investment program that was about $500 million. Is a landmark on the ESRF roadmap, has been delivered on time and within budget, and it allowed us to create really a completely new suite of instruments, a new source, a new data infrastructure, because as you can imagine, we produce a lot of data, and I'll come back to that, but also a very important issue for these kind of projects. And this project was launched, as you can see, in 2009, is really to try to reduce energy consumption and carbon footprint, which has been a key issue from day one. And all that has improved experimental conditions by a factor 100 to 10,000. And any scientist in the room knows that these are the kind of order of magnitudes you want to see if you want to really enter into a new regime. And this new regime is really addressing many issues, as I mentioned before. These are the areas where our enlarging users base use this source to study materials in the health and food, energy, environment, microelectronics, chemistry and catalysis, aerospace, extreme conditions, to know about other planets, advanced materials, consumer products, and also cultural heritage. A couple of numbers on emissions and values. So we exist because some countries decided to work together, because alone they couldn't do it. And as we will see, our member states, they all have their synchrotrons, but they support the ESRF because that's where things start. So we bring nations together through science and contribute to the construction of the European research area. We have always pioneered, since day one, synchrotron science in order to provide to the partner countries unique experimental conditions for new science and new technology. We provide the state-of-the-art X-ray facility that are also addressing issues that are relevant to the innovation and industrial chain. This is really one of the key aspects of the operation of our facilities and contributing with that not only to competitiveness of European industry, but also to a training of young scientists and engineers and entrepreneurs in looking at how give value to this discovery chain. And in that respect is of key importance to try and inspire young generation and society. So some statistics, we have 21 partner countries, so we have about 2,000 scientific publications per year, we have about 10,000 scientific visitors. 30% of our research is carried out with industrial partner and 4 Nobel Prizes. So, okay, we said that we do science, so I'm not going to start giving you a lot kind of statistics. I just want to give you a couple of examples on science on day one, thanks to this new source that today is unique worldwide. Leonardo, in about 500 years ago, started what is an analytical anatomy. You see these beautiful drawings. And 500 years later, with the new ESRF EBS source, there is a real revolution in anatomy and the ability of looking at intact human organs without destroying them, and with a resolution that goes subcellular below 1 micron. And this has started what is called today the Human Organ Atlas project, which is really a revolution for bioimaging. It directly links to the understanding of human diseases and gives a really new insight about the body. And you can see here a heart that has been measured at the ESRF. The rendering is with Siemens headliners, and this don't go into the details, provide really incredible new insight about the heart constitution and its functioning, the direction of the fiber of the muscles. And on the other side, you see a lung of a patient that died of COVID and gave his lung to science. And you can see the incredible detail down to a fraction of a micron, so that has been acquired on the whole lung, and the ability to identify the airways, the functioning blood vessels, the clotted blood vessels, and so on. There are about 40 groups, as we speak, that are working together on this atlas and contributing to their constitution, but also in exploiting the data for the humankind. The other thing that I just want to show is this. ESRF is existing since 1994. ERC is a little bit younger. Until 2018, we didn't have any ERC grant for work that was centered on the exploitation of ESRF. Since 2018, we have seen Marie-Ingrid this morning with her participation. We have 10 that just came in on a project that are fully centered on the exploitation of the new ESRF. And if we move another step, this is the EBS in 2015-2020 is the period of construction. You see the map extremely developed of synchronous sources around the world. And this new endeavor, this new source, which is possible thanks to the continuous analysis of what we can do better, but also to the new technologies that accelerator science can develop, has changed the situation to this one. And as of today, basically every source around the world, and especially those in Europe, are progressing in moving towards the same activity. And all this is coordinated by consortia, like, for example, the LIPS consortia. So, young people, they are key to this process. The new source, the new beamlines are not enough. You really need to bring the people together, the innovators, the scientists, the industry. And in that respect, we have been working very hard to open international hubs on specific themes can be held. We have seen the Human Organ Atlas, can be batteries, and this also involves RTOs and industry. Centers for Disruptive Science and Technology Excellence for all researchers. And of course, we have been developing since 2016 very advanced open science, open data program in which the hundreds of petabytes that are being generated at our facilities are allowing new science, but also the ability by us being custodians to maintain this data wealth for the future generation. And of course, engagement in various training process that goes from elementary school all the way up to postdoctoral programs. And with that, I want to conclude in these few minutes to drive some conclusions. Today, we were able, thanks to the work of all the European member states of the ESRF, to change the paradigm in synchronous X-ray science and application and in the role of analytical RI. And this has, is enabling really a new bridge to our understanding of the worlds of atoms, but also provides fantastic opportunities for increasingly large user base, academy, industry, research and technology organizations. I think ESRF is a role model for a user science-driven research infrastructure able to deliver from day one. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco, for taking us on this very interesting and fascinating journey into the world of synchrotrons. I actually prepared 3 questions for you, but because we're already quite late, I'm going to stick to the most important one, I think. Research infrastructures have been going through some difficult times, first because of COVID, and the access to them was limited. Then an energy crisis came along, and that increased costs for you and many other facilities. So in that difficult context, which we're trying to come out of, what are your hopes and expectations from Europe to make sure that we continue the success?
Indeed, European research infrastructure, all the Euroforum research infrastructure, we heard today by EMBL, we have representatives from CERN. We have been suffering very heavily from this crisis. Of course, it's been hitting the energy cost, the supply chain, the ability to deliver within the time scale that was planned. And it's clear that within our governance, research infrastructure and European research infrastructures are not very much eligible to many of the plans that have been devised, like Next Generation EU or France 2030 in France or the PNRR in Italy. So indeed, there's been a net loss in purchasing power of our budgets that needs to be reestablished in order to maintain competitiveness, especially with similar major endeavors that we have in the US, in Japan, and China.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that frank answer. So more support is needed. That's the conclusion, right?
Always.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, as promised, we've come to the final panel. So I'd like to invite our panelists on stage. I want to introduce, first of all, Marc Lemaitre, the Director General of DG RTD at the European Commission. Please take a seat. Then I want to introduce also Thomas Jarzombek, the member of the German Bundestag, and also a CDU, CSU spokesperson on research and education. We have here, just arriving now, Maria da Graça Carvalho, member of the European Parliament from Portugal. There you go. Yes, please go ahead and take a seat. And last but not least, we have Hugh Brady, President of Imperial College London. So, please take a seat. Mark, I want to start with you. And do you need some help with that? Okay. Interesting. I'll let you take a sip of water first, and then we start. So we've recently seen the ex-post evaluation of Horizon 2020. There were lots of interesting conclusions in there. A midterm evaluation of Horizon Europe is coming up in a year from now or so. We don't know what the conclusions of that will be, but we have a bit of an idea of what the research innovation community is expecting in the next period of Horizon Europe, but also from FP10. Yesterday we had a series of workshops tackling specifically those questions. So what should be next? What should come next in FP10? I wrote down here 6 main conclusions. So the first one obviously is ensure a much bigger budget, ring fence it so it doesn't get cannibalized, so to speak. Improve synergies with the Regional Development Fund. Figure out a way to handle AI in this research funding process. Lower barriers for SME participation, and come up with governance for association. So these are very big topics, I understand. So I'm reading these conclusions from yesterday just to set the scene for our discussion. And now I want to come to you, Mark, on what was your take from the ex-post evaluation of Horizon 2020? What were the few things that struck you the most?
Thank you very much, Florin, and thank you very much for having me here today. You highlight there that it is your own anniversary, I understand,
yes,
of science business, but also the anniversary, indeed, of the framework program. We are in a tough context when it comes to public policy making, and this is why I do believe that we need the soundest possible evidence basis in order to shape policies going forward. And I thank you to have started with that, with what we have just put on the table, which we believe is a very comprehensive and honest assessment of the achievements, but also of the shortcomings of Horizon 2020. Now, some might be eager to know, and how about Horizon Europe, and how is it going? We will be working on that. But let me perhaps share with you why we need to zoom in on Horizon 2020. Only 60% of the Horizon 2020 projects are concluded today. So there is still a lot of impact to come, and this is why we needed that time to make this honest evaluation. What do I take out of it? I think, again, in all honesty, that the glass is way more than half full. If you look at the macroeconomic impact, we estimate as a minimum that for each euro spent, there would be a positive impact by €5. So quite a decent rate of return. For the first time, we have also been able to measure the microeconomic impact on businesses by looking at counterfactuals, comparing businesses which obtained Horizon 2020 support as compared to those who applied but didn't obtain support. You see a marked difference in performance where those who obtained support beat their competitors by 30% when it comes to the development of turnover and by 20% when it comes to the development of employment. I won't bother all of us with the, let's say, more science-related metrics in terms of excellence and top publications and all of that, but all this was also very positive. But of course, there are shortcomings. The first one, I think, is related to one of the points you mentioned, looking towards the future. The eternal call for more simplicity of access, and we take it very, very seriously. A second one, which is about broadening participation, not only from the classic widening point of view that institutions from less well-performing member states should be participating, but also in terms of new participants generally. So I think we have, and I would invite everyone to take a deeper look at this evaluation. We have quite an abundance of evidence there to base our reflections for the future on. And as you said, we will also be benefiting in more or less 1 year's time from the first evidence we can draw from Horizon Europe.
So how are these conclusions going to feed into the process towards FP10? What are the next steps? So now you've learned a bit about Horizon 2020 and its impact. So how are you going to take that further into the planning for FP10?
Let me just add one more point, probably the most important one, where we need to reflect a bit. And it is on the dissemination and exploitation of results, where Horizon 2020 was clearly falling short of what we would intrinsically hope for. I mention it now because we are, it seems to me, in indeed a very challenging context when it comes to the fight for public resources, but we also perceive that there is a bit of soul-searching on our economic future in Europe, our industrial future, our competitiveness. As you know, Prime Minister Draghi, ex-Prime Minister Draghi, is working on a report on competitiveness. So I do anticipate that this topic will be one we should very seriously zoom in on. How to produce more economic impact from our research efforts through the framework program. To help us, we have set up a high-level group presided by Professor Manuel Heitor, who was Minister for Education and Science, just like Mrs. Carvalho here. This group has now started in earnest its work. In fact, today I had the pleasure to accompany them for the first hour of that work, and they are tasked with producing a report before the end of the present Commission's term, meaning by October at the latest.
Okay. So you're expecting a bigger emphasis on this link between the research program and EU's industrial policy, or economic policy more broadly.
We are at a time where we may well be wrong, but I do think that this is a space to watch, yes.
Okay. we will come back to this topic a bit later, but now I want to focus on something that is somewhat related to this. So if the ambition is so big, should the budget be equally ambitious? We have heard proposals from the European Parliament of 200 billion, which, Maria, you've advocated for that together with Christian Ehler. But we've heard, in the background, also discussions about a much bigger pot that includes everything, defense and healthcare and all sorts of things, into a big pot of 500 billion. So what do you make of all this? What should be taken seriously and what shouldn't?
We are at a point where the Commission, which will be making proposals on the next multi-annual budget for the EU, is not even yet known, not in place. So at a point where there is ample room indeed for honest discussions about what is required. But I would bring it down when it comes to research and innovation to one very simple point. And it is that we have promised ourselves for decades now that we should ramp up our efforts to 3% of GDP. And where are we today? At 2.2% of GDP. Where's China today? Higher than that, at around 2.3 and growing fast. And where are the United States? 3.6, 3.7%. And we see that the gap has been growing. Think also of South Korea, of Japan. So in this context of soul-searching around competitiveness, as I said, I think that this is an obvious target to fix, to get right. We need to get our act together here. And by saying this, I haven't yet said how we should reach 3%. Science business. What should businesses' share be of this? In Europe, we have a business share of R&I which is comparatively relatively modest. How can we also improve that?
What are the figures at the moment?
Sorry?
Do you know the figures at the moment?
The figures are that private business does around 60 to 65% in Europe. If you take South Korea, not only are they at 4.5% of GDP, but you have 4/5 of that which comes from private business. Now, this can be also explained, related to our industrial structures and this and that. But I'm just saying that there are sub-questions to this 3% target. And another sub-question will obviously be what is, when it comes to the the public contribution to the 3% target, what should be, I don't think it's the right term, the division of labor, the financial division of labor between the EU level instruments and the national level instruments. Today, it's 1/10 and 9/10. I say I don't think it's quite the proper term because I also believe that we need to think much more about being aligned in terms of our fundamental objectives, what we are pursuing, be it through the national means, be it through European means. We need a kind of common compass when it comes to our R&I efforts in the future.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Just to keep the focus on the budget, I want to ask you, Maria. You have called for 200 billion euros for FP10. What would that figure achieve? And would it be together with, can you see that happen, in the next budgetary cycle, that we reach 3% in the member states, on average at least?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here in this panel. We have called for what we consider is an ambitious budget for Horizon, for the next Horizon FP10, because we need really to kickstart was probably the first ones to start talking about myself and my colleague Christian Eller. As we have to make sure that the proposal that comes from the European Commission is high enough. It happened already in Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe that there were rumors that the figures were lower, and we start from the European Parliament pushing, and the initial proposal was a bit higher than first foreseen. And this is important, the starting point, because we always have a big fight in the Council. In the Council, when we negotiate budget, we have the group of Friends of Agriculture, the group Friends of Cohesion, and the ones that want to pay less. So, this is our problem, because the countries that benefit more from research, usually the first priority is to pay less. I give the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, that we would expect that would support the European Parliament for research. They will do it as second priority, but not as first priority. Usually it's Germany that will support us. Let's hope that it continues like that. But it's a difficult fight for the budget for research. I find dangerous that we mix research with other priorities, because we really need, and I think was your expression of ring fencing, because what happened we set up a budget for research and innovation, and during the period when there are new ideas, new programs, they all come to the FP for getting the budget, because the others are the management is with the member states, and member states do not allow that you take out of the agriculture or the regional funds for new initiatives. So usually the one to suffer is the framework program. So that's that we would like to see quite a budget that is dedicated to research and innovation, and that is not changed along the time and reduced along the time. We had a difficult fight just now that was Horizon Europe suffer a cut of 2.1 billion euros, so it's not a very good sign for the future. And we have a lot of new priorities for research, new challenge, so we really need this budget. We also need to go deeper in the synergies, not only the regional funds. There are other funds that we can do synergies with, and it's a very, like the development funds. So if you are dealing with malaria, AIDS, tuberculosis in Africa, and we at the moment, we are not doing these synergies with other funds for that European Union is financing in African countries. We still do not do these synergies. I was in the report, I'm very proud that I was rapporteur of Horizon 2020, and after the partnerships and the EIT in the Horizon Europe, and I have pushed always for these synergies, and still not there. Mm-hmm. Also, I fully agree on the simplification on structure and simplification on the rules. Still, we need to go much further on that. I did it for Horizon 2020, but it is still a very complex program and still complex rules. On the excellence part of the program, I think that we should not change much, because we should not change what works well. ERC, Marie Curie, Yaru working well. So on the more innovation part, we need still to streamline.
In what way?
I like very much the partnerships. I was a rapporteur, but it's not because of that. Things like clean aviation is something fantastic that we have to show, and the AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis, the CTP that is now called global health, is something. The first malaria vaccine was developed under, with the collaboration of these partnerships, so it is very good. But for example, between the EIC and the EIT, and I defend the two, but probably they can have common structures. Probably they don't need to be in different two agencies. So they could
Mark, sorry
be
to drag
one
you into
agency.
this,
It's
but
a more administrative.
is that
the
feasible?
Content, one is in Brussels, another is in Budapest. I think that is one of the problems that you have, but it's something that should be solved, because we could save some funds. I fully agree that we need more outreach.
Just a second, I want to follow up on this issue. Is that feasible? Or what's your take on this?
Look, you were hypothesizing about a 500 billion fund. So
Well, I am
everything
not.
is everything is on the table. I think that what is obvious is that on the one hand, linked to the circumstances, this Commission has been proposing, and it has been accepted, so a lot of new instruments. And clearly there is a certain consensus that we need to rationalize, especially if public means are short. And clearly, and this brings me back also to the question, how do we manage to be more impactful on exploitation of results? For sure, on the innovation side of the program, we have some reflection to do. And it has indeed to do also with the fact that today we have the European Innovation Council on the one hand, which is a fantastic success. And on the other hand, we have the European Institute for Innovation and Technology, which has a different business model, but which was meant and is pursuing for its knowledge and innovation communities to, in fact, become autonomous and standing on their own feet when it comes to financing. And some of them are getting there. So we clearly have some reflection to do there.
Okay, thank you for that. I interrupted you, and I'm sorry. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
I want to say that we need to do much more dissemination, not only the projects themselves, but also the European institutions, the European Commission. It's not well known what we do in the framework program, so it's very good successful cases that need to disseminate. And I just want to talk about the widening. It was something that I
We'll get that to
okay.
In a few minutes. But until then, I want to ask Thomas, just to get a sense of what's the view in Germany on these issues. So what's the thinking on the future of European research policy, and what are the priorities for Germany?
Yeah, I think my advantage coming from the outside, so to say, outside of the Brussels bubble, inside of the Berlin bubble, but nevertheless, to have an outside view on that, I'm a fan always on going on some principles. And the first principle from my point of view should be basic research is key. And you have to build a fence around it. And from my point of view right now, basic research is not enough inside that program. There are so many aims and goals, and advance to this conference here today. I looked through the strategy papers, and there are so many aims and goals, and how can they get together? It's unclear for me, to be honest. So I think the freedom of academia, the freedom of research is key, and I think it would be good to have a higher amount for this pillar 1. And to build a fence around that. And then when it comes to all the other programs, it's what we call in Germany ein Gemischtwarenladen, a general store. You can find everything there. And what I see is there's more and more industry politics in it. And that's not R&D or R&I or however you call it. And what I totally miss in all the papers I read are words like entrepreneurship, competition, milestones, cancellation of programs, I don't find that. And when I look at the last period, I was in the government and was responsible, beside of others, for space. And when you look at these space programs, which are part here, there is no competition at all. Look at this IRIS², for instance. The whole construction is absolute catastrophe. I cannot find better words for this, because there is not a competition between several players. Everything is, all the legacy players are put together and say, so build a political solution, and not the best innovation or the best market solution. And when I look to US programs like the US CHIPS Act, I see that they only spend money to create new players. So where's the idea in this whole innovation policy to create new players? And so let's take a little bit the bigger picture. If you look at companies, tech companies that are worth more than 100 billion, there are 17 in the world, 11 coming from the US and 6 from China, and 0 from Europe. And as a national politician, I can say, so I'm not sure if Germany or France or whoever is capable of building these companies. And I even don't believe that politics can do that, but we must build the right frame set. And the whole innovation politics, and this is also criticism of what we do on national level on sometimes, is too much concentrated on these big legacy players. As you correctly said, there are a lot of industry issues and things that are coming from the past and so on. And we don't focus enough on competition, on entrepreneurship, and building new things. So this is my key point of view on all this. And there are some instruments like the EIC that you have made, and I also talk often to Christian Ehler, he's a friend of mine, and I think this is an important step. I'm not fine with everything that's happening there, but it's a step in the right direction because it's starting building new players. But if they are created from seed, so who's going to make these players big? And then there is the last point is dual use. This right now the whole frame set is made for civil causes, or most of it, and I think everything changed over the last 2 years. So dual use is also key, and if you look at the United States, all these tech players, the whole internet is procurement by the US Department of Military. And so this is what we also have to head to.
So I get from you 2 points. One is the need to create new industrial champions in Europe.
To create new players that
yeah,
can get industrial champions if they are good. And I think 1 out of 10 can make it, or maybe 1 out of 20. Okay. And so this is an idea that I don't find so often on this side of the Atlantic, that also companies have to die. And that projects have to die, but they have to die soon and early. And I mean, I can tell you from our projects, as we have, I heard so much about accelerators here today and synchrotrons. So look at FAIR in Darmstadt. This is a good example. And if you never find, if you don't find people in a scene that believe in such a project, then you know that you're too late. Yeah, I mean, you need milestones. After 10% budget spent, you really have to evaluate and say we do it or we do it not. And not every project can be a success.
Can the framework program be that agile?
I just said the European Innovation Council is a fantastic success. Now, you won't find evidence on that in the Horizon 2020 ex post evaluation, because it was there a pilot project. But by now, meaning only 3 years into Horizon Europe, I dare say that it is a fantastic success because it is exactly delivering the kind of description that you have made. New players. We have, supported by the EIC by now, more than 100 what are called centaurs. Centaurs are not quite your unicorns, but they are companies that have grown to turnover of 100 million euro, which is no small beer, I would suggest. What areas are they concentrated in? It is health and biotech. It is quantum by now. It is also AI, and we are supporting that through mostly what we call open calls, meaning no obligation to be in this or that sector, and to a certain extent, yes, through specific calls, and the latest ones are, for instance, in AI and in quantum. Now, on scaling up, we still have an issue, because the European Innovation Council today is limited to chipping in up to 15 million euros. And we know that the trip remains very difficult after that. And very often after that, in fact, these gems are being bought up by US, Israeli, Chinese capital. We made a proposal called Sette, which would have allowed, under the European Innovation Council, to go up to 50 million euros for second or third round investments, which means that these would have been investment rounds of overall 250 million and above. Exactly what we see today is very much required in Europe, but is not being delivered by capital markets. We know that we have serious shortcomings. Capital Markets Union is a term which is not filled by reality today.
Could Sette deliver that in its current form?
Well, we will not get the money for it. That is the issue. We asked, we asked to mobilize 2.6 billion euros exactly for that in the last 3 years of Horizon Europe, to do exactly that, to invest, follow-on investment up to 50 million for us, and meaning with private capital, because from that point of view, EIC is also a rousing success. We have a multiplier factor of 3.5, meaning we get 3.5 euros of private equity investment for every euro that we put in. Now, what have we achieved? We have achieved that we have legislation now. So on paper we can do it, but as you reminded, not only did we not get 2.6 billion mobilized, which was not all fresh money in fact, but we got a cut of 2.1 billion for Horizon Europe overall. So it will be very difficult in this context to turn this into a reality. But certainly this is also where we need to focus for the future, for the next framework program.
Maria,
unfinished business.
You wanted to reply?
Yes, it is not fair to put all the pressure on the framework program. Of course, we need an agile framework program. We need a good education system, but you need what I call, and the economists of the knowledge society call the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is to have infrastructures, to have not to have a complex legislation, and we have a very complex, heavy legislation in Europe, not to have a fragmented internal market that we still have, labor laws that are different from member state to member state. All that would need to be solved for the competitiveness question, and we should, in the next 5 years, to have as a priority to improve the competitiveness in Europe. And you need to fund research and innovation, but you need the private fund, and the private fund, you need so many conditions that we don't have. We have too much bureaucracy, heavy taxes in some of the member states, and a lot of other issues that we need to solve. They are well known, they are described in many papers by the economists, and it's something that should be done together with an agile and well-funded framework program. Very important in this ecosystem is what they call the catalyzers. That is the top universities and the top research centers that improve things to go faster. But the ecosystem needs to be there.
Okay. We've talked quite a bit about industry and then the links between research policy and industry policy, and how the framework program can contribute to that. There is another component in all that, in that conversation, and that's defense, the military industry. So we have a new player in the R&I world. well, not really a new player, but a player that's suddenly emerging. Hugh, I want to turn to you now, just to bring you in this conversation about what do you think will be the impact of this new push in Europe for dual-use research on the links between research and academia? You yourself representing a large university, a significant university in the UK.
First, I should say it's just fantastic to be part of the club again. If this was last year, I'd be sitting somewhere out in the back. But I'd hope you'd accept, I can wear a number of hats. So yes, president of Imperial College London, one of the UK's and indeed the world's finest STEM B institutions, but also an Irish citizen. So I can, I must say the day that association was announced, and I know many of you were very influential in driving a hard bargain, but actually making it happen. I have never had so many messages of thanks from our entire community. And the reason being is they recognize, one is the excellence and the benchmark that is the European Research Council, for example, but also that scale really counts. And that, there are three big science superpowers in the world, the US, China, and the European ecosystem. So really important for us to be part of that. And hopefully Switzerland soon, just to put because again, scale absolutely counts. And if you look, again, just picking up on the points, and I'm going to come to the dual use, but we need to be actually deploying every ingredient we have if we're going to compete with the two other superpowers who right now, as Mark said, have a baseline of superior funding. But on top of that, if you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, that infusion into the US, particularly innovation ecosystem, has put them on a completely different trajectory, and likewise in a very different way in China. I think it's very reasonable that actually we're taking a more pragmatic approach to dual use. Firstly, it recognizes that virtually all science, medicine, and engineering, and most technologies, depending on the time frame, potentially have dual use. And it's very reasonable that our research programs, whether the UK or in Europe, should be contributing to defence within all of the using our value set and our guidelines. Well, but I think citizens now expect that. I think the key question, though, is how is it regulated? Because too little regulation, obviously, you have the danger of security issues. But equally, too heavy-handed regulation at the one time, at the very time in our history that Europe needs to take a step change in terms of its innovation potential. Too heavy innovation could actually put a lid on the whole thing. Interestingly, it is an area where maybe the UK system possibly is more developed, because certainly through our own funding councils, dual use is accepted. And there is quite a nuanced conversation. I mean, there is an expectation that universities will have their own guidelines, but there is quite a nuanced then conversation, as well as the rigorous application where appropriate of export controls where necessary. But I think to exclude dual use is actually, and the points we made, so many of those brilliant US, brilliant Israeli startups have actually come from dual use technologies, particularly in the world of ICT. So I think it's a very pragmatic response that I would imagine the citizens of Europe will now accept as being appropriate because of what's happened in geopolitics in the last 2 years.
Is there anyone who wants to respond to that? Yes, please.
If I could just draw attention to the white paper on this question that we have just brought out, which in fact puts forward 3 options.
Which option do you prefer?
The answer to that is that the consultation period is open until 30th of April. And we are very much in a listening mode on this one, because we know that opinions probably diverge. I think what you said is extremely pertinent here, but let's see what picture emerges from that consultation. Mm-hmm. If I can just jump back for 1 second to one very important thing Thomas said. He put emphasis on basic research, and I just don't want to be misunderstood when. Mm-hmm. When presenting here the results of the European Innovation Council, that I would be neglecting the European Research Council. Absolutely not. And also for one very simple reason, and it is that there is a direct link, we see it, between the European Research Council and the European Innovation Council. Through the ERC's proof of concept and the European Innovation Council so-called transition before going into the equity investment part, so to make the business case from research results, well, we see that one feeds the other. And this is very interesting and very promising, I think, from Europe, because indeed it goes from, you know, lab, not incumbents, from lab then to entrepreneurship and commercial success.
Okay, I think the ERC will very much appreciate that message. Now, just coming back to the issue of dual use, and we discussed in the beginning about the budget and how difficult it is to convince the member states, to convince, you know, the discussions in the council are difficult and so on. So the question is, will it be easier to persuade member states to invest more in FP10, to allow FP10 to have a bigger budget, if it will have a significant defense component? Is that a, yeah, Thomas?
I would say this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for innovation. I mean, I don't know how it is everywhere in Europe, but in Germany we're debating for years now about DARPA and how could we adopt the strategy of the United States. And we built the Sprint agency, and the ERC is a similar idea. But in the end, what's missing are the huge procurements, And so this is where you build the multiples with private capital. So we tried this. We made a competition for small launchers in Germany. And the idea was not to give them subsidies or grants or something like this. The idea was to buy the first 2 starts from a rocket that's not been created until this point. And so the most successful company in that race was ESRF, a startup in Munich, and we spent 11 million euros in buying the first 2 starts, and they gained 300 million of private capital. And so I think procurement is key. Procurement, pre-commercial procurement. And so with these military budgets, you can make an explosion of innovation. So this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I believe, and we should use that. And when I talk to people that are engaged in the Ukraine battles, they tell me that it takes 6 weeks to implement new technologies and to have the Russian answer on that. If it's AI or if it's with drones or whatever, it is so rapid, so agile, you cannot imagine. And so basically, evaluation is a good thing, but if you evaluate a program that's from 2014 and you want to adapt your strategy today, you have a gap of 10 years minimum. Yeah? So evaluation is good, but look what's happening today. And so I think we need agile programs, and they also have to adapt in itself. And one word on this also, missions. I'm not sure if you can today define missions or clusters for things that are happening in 5 or in 10 years. So I mean, who has predicted AI being so big, or quantum, or you see the latest success in fusion energy on jet and so on, and there's always something new upcoming. And so this is the fascinating thing of research. And don't build these static missions and clusters, and so make more open codes.
Okay, I think, Mark, do you want to respond to that, or should I just move on to the next topic?
I don't want to monopolize
Okay.
speaking time here.
Yes, Maria.
I just want to make a comment on the information. When we start thinking about the EIC. I was in the commission with Commissioner Moedas, and the model was DARPA. But what was missing was the procurement. Yeah. So, but we really analyzed it in detail in order to have the inspiration. But there is a lot of restriction from financial regulations to all the European regulations to set up a program that, in the case of the US, is completely different. So, but the public procurement, it's a difference between the two that is missing in this in the European side.
Okay, thank you. So there are two topics left that I want to touch upon. But before that, I want to ask the room whether there are any questions. Yes, David, and then the gentleman here. Here in front first, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, David Matthews from Science Business. I mean, one of the key things that's emerged from discussions over the past 2 days is Horizon Europe. It's not just an EU program. It's an increasing international program with associated countries, Canada, New Zealand, now the UK, of course, possibly South Korea, in addition in the future. But with that comes some governance challenges, sort of who controls Horizon Europe, and indeed the next framework program. So I'd like to ask Mark, and possibly you as well, being based in the UK, should associated countries have the same governance rights as EU member states, including a vote on deciding work programs?
Let's take the other question and then we'll answer them, okay? Please, yes. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, Servaas Dutelo, TU Delft in the Netherlands. And my question pertains to dual use and the GDP percentage spent on research. And what would be the ideal defense percentage GDP? So what is this public spend of member states? Because that will have to come from somewhere. And there's also a scale-up issue. So can the panel reflect on that, please?
Okay, thank you. So let's start with the association question and international governance. Who wants to take that?
Well, perhaps you, no?
Yeah.
Hugh.
It's known as a hospital pass, I think. I think, I mean, you're right that I mean, we should take great pride in the fact that it is the world's largest transnational research and innovation program. And there's huge strength in that. I think though, as Maria said, that there is a real need for us to try and lighten the regulation or the rules where we can, strengthen them where appropriate. But I would imagine maybe learning from each other. I mean, an example is intellectual property was brought up. We've just gone through a very useful exercise in the UK, chaired by Eileen Tracy, who's Vice Chancellor of the University of Oxford, to simplify our IP rules. And that was done in cooperation with industry. Really makes sense. I think is really going to increase deal flow. You can imagine where the EU would look at that and saying, let's not reinvent the wheel. When you get into dual use, I mean, again, I can only imagine, and I'll leave it to Mark and Thomas and Maria. I mean, if we had to negotiate a common set of regulations around dual use, we might be here in 20 years' time. So I think maybe some pragmatism, but there again, maybe because the UK has been down that dual use route for several decades and has really wrestled with what a really complex issue and many shades of grey. But now there are very useful templates and operating procedures, again, that we should be willing to share. Because I think again, as was said, I mean, speed is of the essence. This next framework has got to be absolutely transformational for the European ecosystem, or else we're going to fall seriously behind. If you look at 2035, we could be in serious trouble unless this one really takes us to another level of innovation. So I think maybe sharing of experiences, sharing of protocols, sharing of of regulatory ideas rather than locking down the system in a way that completely clamps down its innovation potential.
Okay, thank you very much. Mark, do you want to come in on that too?
Well, I thank you for having emphasized how unique in the world the program is in being so open to cooperation, in fact, with more or less anyone across the world, not only associated countries. And this certainly has served Europe well overall. It has raised our research capacity overall, but clearly some new questions have emerged more recently. On association itself, most of the associated countries are candidates to join the European Union or are immediate neighbors counting the southern Mediterranean. And it is a novel feature that we have also attracted, I would say, the likes of New Zealand and Canada, and possibly indeed soon South Korea. And let's see if the list would end there. I think it is a demonstration of the attraction that Horizon Europe produces, because fundamentally what these countries are doing is basically agreeing to contribute to a program where they basically have no control. So it is quite unique, and they must be seeing the advantages of doing that, of renouncing decision-making power, ultimate decision-making power over their public money, and this is what they are doing. So I would say, looking at the list of countries that are associated by now or that are somehow in the queue, that these countries, in my view, do not pose any fundamental questions related to a sufficient alignment of values, to economic security concerns, which does not mean that we wouldn't, in certain instances, for certain specific research topics, restrict the possibility to participate. And we are doing it as we speak, for instance, on quantum, including vis-à-vis associated countries. But generally, I think today we are in a relatively good place, offering these common rules with associated countries where basically there is no discrimination for most of the funding, I mean 97% of the funding. So I think it is a very positive model that we have embarked on, and which is worth continuing in the future. We will, though, have some more questions down the road, no doubt, given the present evolving public debate around research security and economic security.
Okay, thank you for that. You mentioned earlier the importance of the EU and the UK working together towards this bigger goal in terms of competing with the rest of the world. So beyond association, how do you imagine the EU and the UK could work together?
I think being part of this type of conversation where we are, I mean, the UK, why our communities were so upset about the 2-year where we were without club membership was because people felt that they had played a significant part in shaping the program, which is why I think this conversation is so important. If there was one ingredient maybe I'd add that really hasn't been touched upon today is the importance of almost fast forwarding and asking, you know, what not only is current state-of-the-art research, how is it structured, but how is it likely to be in 5 years? So increasingly we're seeing interdisciplinarity at its core. So it's not going to be quantum or engineering biology or AI. So many of the discoveries and so many of the conversations that we're having with industry, they're looking for a much deeper relationship because they see so many of the discoveries that are relevant to their business as being actually at the interface of the disciplines rather than in the disciplines. So I would think just urge us to be careful not to lock down into silos, be they exciting, emerging silos. The second thing, I think, to consider the convening power of research universities as catalysts for innovation within city regions. Mm-hmm. I think that's something, if you look at Singapore, essentially as a city, a very large city, that they do extremely well. But it allows us to bring industries, to bring civil society in a way where the discussion is going beyond research and application. You're also touching upon skill needs. You're also talking about the other elements of the ecosystem that have to be aligned if we're going to realize our full potential. And you could see there are a number of programs in the CREATE program in Singapore really impressive in doing that. The UK had a Strength and Places program, which in its wisdom it shut down, which was amazing in terms of, you know, convening power, innovation power in city regions. And then you could then see those being networked. So I think maybe it's really important that we get out of our academic and research disciplinary silos in terms of disciplinarity, but also maybe to think about place as being key.
Okay, thank you very much. One final question, and please try to keep the answers very, very short. But so this goes for Mark and Thomas and you, Maria. So the question is very simple, but also very complicated. Is the EU ready to tackle these really, really big challenges with the help of R&I policy in the next framework program? What can you say so we can get out of this meeting a bit more optimistic about our future? Yeah. I don't know. Whoever's the most optimistic.
I can start. I think yes, because we came out of the pandemic with the help of science and our framework program. We came out of the energy crisis, getting together and common purchase of gas, and now developing a new electricity market design. Now we have in front of us a big challenge, the question of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. We have the enlargement that is going to be very complex. All this is going to add some complexity, but we have very good tools. We get united when necessary. Artificial intelligence is going to change a lot of things for the better. We have voted today in the committees the last vote on AI, that is going to be the AI Act, that is going to be voted in plenary in April. Is the first in the world with a good legislation. We are going to try, is a novelty, to get a new program on AI factories to give power to our supercomputers to perform in the AI. So we are working hard to get ready for all this challenge. Okay. There are a lot.
Thomas.
I'm very thankful to hear from you, Maria, about GPUs and AI. I heard so much about synchrotrons. They're very important, but there's Also,
future.
also other stuff. Yeah, I think as I'm coming from the Rhineland, we are always optimistic, and so it depends on us what we're doing. And I think the whole situation is totally crazy. My son is 9 years old, and when he was born, I could never imagine that there's a possibility that he could fight on a border against a real enemy. I couldn't imagine, but right now we have to face that. And so in these crazy times, maybe you have to find the opportunities. And one opportunity is to accelerate innovation and to use this crisis, this challenge for accelerating innovation.
Thank you very much. Mark, you have the final word.
Well, I'd start with what Maria mentioned, which I think is a good illustration of what Europe is capable of when we put our minds to it collectively, and it is where we are today in high-performance computing. 10 years ago, we were nearly off the map, and now we have 5 of the 10 most potent high-performance computers in the world, and we have just, perhaps belatedly, but we have just opened them up now to SMEs active in AI and so on and so forth.
I was rapporteur, I'm very proud of that.
So congratulations on that one. Yes, what I mean to say by this is that faced with pressure, I think that Europe has demonstrated that it can pull together and that it can set the right priorities and pool resources in the right way in order to overcome those difficulties. And I do think that today, pressures being so multiple, one being a very real military pressure, others being technology-driven, where we have the impression that we are losing the plot. Others being linked to the transformations that we want to drive, green transformation, digital transformation. I do think that the circumstances are, in fact, beneficial for such a more collective thinking at European level, for getting more clarity on our priorities, on what we want to achieve, and for also translating that in the right instruments. And by that, I don't mean just European level instruments, but instruments which work properly together in a federal type system as the one we have in the EU.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite you all to give a round of applause to our distinguished guest here. And now I'd like to invite Marilyn back on stage to wrap up.
Thank you all. Wow, that was mind-blowing. So I really thank you for putting so much energy and creativity. We need also to end on a positive note. We've heard plenty today. Yes, we are early stage in the discussions toward FP10, but gosh, there is some substance. So there is plenty of ideas and recommendations that we at Science Business will keep watching. So we are watching the space. As the Commission is very open, so are we. So do bring all your input. I'm not a journalist, but I can speak on their behalf. We take as many perspectives as we can. This is what we do as well with the network, so watch the space. There will be also meetings. And in fact, it's good to hear that defense has come up so often, because the next network meeting is a private roundtable on defense R&D. So we stay on top of the curve, of the wave. So with that, I'm not going to hold you any longer because there are drinks waiting for you outside. But before we close officially, I just want to thank again our speakers throughout this long day. But you've done a magnificent job. Those of you who've been watching, well, in the room, and those watching online, I want to thank the sponsors, again, ESRF, Elsevier, DSW, Attract, and the Science Business Network overall. I want to thank two more partners, University of Bergen and the regional office of Friuli Venezia Giulia, for supporting the science business staff who needed it, and the staff of Science Business, again, a big round of applause, because this conference has been a really nice moment for everyone, so thank you. Drinks.